Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com.
350 episodes in, it would seem. So I thought it would be nice to sort of start this episode off, our 350th episode, just acknowledging that. And also simultaneously, it also happens to be, we're recording this on the 13th of September 2025. It was on the 13th of September 2014 when we did our very first inaugural SciTech Culture episode. So, it's just funny, time flies and whatnot. 11 years fly by and, still going strong and whatnot.
Well, that's right, Ben. The iPhone 6 becomes the iPhone 17 and et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, it's been, a long time, or it feels like yesterday. It's always hard to know with these things, but of course we've seen a lot of things change over that time, and we've had a lot of conversations about those sci-tech cultural things.
Absolutely. So in that spirit, our main topic that we'll get to in a minute, it will be covering what Apple unveiled at its iPhone event in this past week. I find that it's sort of we'll get to that in a minute, but I find that there's a good correlation here, because on our very first episode, we talked about the iPhone 6 launch, which also was the launch of the Apple Watch under the One More Thing banner that I believe Tim Cook used for the first time rather than Steve Jobs at the time. I might touch on that a little bit later too and tie it up with our Apple discussion just on that component of it. But the other thing we covered were wearable technology, and I think we were maybe a bit more bullish on the idea that more tech would come out in the wearable space. But I'm sure that there's more that's being worked on. But some of the things we talked about were like the Samsung's wearable devices, like the Gear watches, etc., the Nike Plus Fuel Band, Fitbit devices, Google Glass we touched on, and high-tech clothing. But the funny thing is, just looking at just through that list, if you think about a mainstream product, it seems like only the watch has really survived any of that. Apple Watch, obviously, but also, the Samsung watches, Google watches, etc., that have come out since. And I wonder if that's just because, practical day-to-day life. The closest thing is strapping a Vision Pro to your head, but you're not going to walk around with that in the street. So it's interesting, like some things and I'm sure they're still working on this stuff, but it's just interesting all these years later, it's really just the watch that's been the mainstay.
Well, it is interesting, and the interesting one to touch on as well is the Google Glass, which failed at the time, and they always said, came out too soon, etc., etc. But the Meta Ray-Ban arrangement hasn't really set the world on fire either. So it's hard to know. I would have thought that really the glass concept would take off at some point, but maybe people just don't like the idea. Who knows?
Until the Vision Pro is miniaturized into a pair of glasses at some point, or whatever Facebook's one, I can't remember what it's called now, but anyway, you know what I'm talking about.
I certainly do, yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the Apple stuff then. This is our Apple Sheep episode. We might as well go and have a look into that. So I just mentioned before that back in 2014, the iPhone 6 was released. Now, just as a quick trip down memory lane, releases back then carried a lot more excitement, and it was largely because what used to happen is that there was a major form factor redesign every 2 years. So every 2 years, people got into a habit of expecting that Apple would unveil a completely new design, and it literally was a completely new design, and it would be exciting, etc. And the iPhone 6 launch in particular was exciting because it was the first time Apple actually made a big and bigger phone compared to their regular lineup, which was only like the 3.5 to 4 inch size screen range. And so technically, yes, that qualifies as that was exciting. What it did start, however, was another 4 years of them just essentially reusing the same design until they got to the iPhone 10, which then led to a whole decade afterwards of them essentially using the same form factor design even up until the now recently unveiled 17 Pros that came out, and the 17s. We'll argue about the Air separately because obviously that's a little bit different, but it's but it's an interesting contrast just to start there, because people have gotten why can't they innovate, why can't they do something exciting? But maybe it's just a case of that's just not what it's about anymore. You look at the lineup, what are they doing this year? Is it giving me anything? No. Wait till next year, which is essentially what I've done, and I'll get to that in a minute, which is I waited for 3 years and I've got a 17 Pro Max coming in, but I didn't do that sort of regular sort of updating that I used to do every 2 years when the form factors used to change all the time.
Yeah, it's interesting that, and I think that there's a few things in this to unpack, and one is that by the time we got to the iPhone 6, phone technology was actually reasonably mature. And I guess if you want a very sort of standard sort of comparison, look at the refrigerator, which in all its years of existence takes on many different exterior forms, but effectively it's a box that cools stuff down. A phone, you got to pack in all the hardware that makes it work. A smartphone, you have to pack in extra hardware to allow the phone to do all the things that it needs to do. Once you've worked out how big that needs to be and where it all goes inside that case, there's not a whole lot to change form-wise. You can make it curved, you can make it round, you can do what Samsung did and give it the edge, whatever you like. But at the end of the day, it's probably going to be a miniature tablet is effectively what we have today. So I'm not surprised. One of the things I do think when I look at the iPhone, and my favourite iPhone of all time was the 4S. Really, sure, the phones are a different size now in terms of screen size, essentially, but they're no different. The iPhone's no different. So what we've seen since the iPhone 6 is an optimization of the phone. And I think that, to Apple's credit, while probably none of their phones have been particularly exciting since the iPhone 6, incrementally they've optimized them every time. Better cameras, better, just better operation. And I think the fact that they're still generally the preferred phone, apart from the expense, goes to show that they know how to make a phone probably better than anyone else, whatever you think of the features they may or may not have.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, like that was like a factor in when I was considering the 17 Pro Max, because the things that I was looking at were the accumulation over a few years of the camera system improvements, which are decent this time. The USB-C port. I just like the idea that I could now go out, shoot ProRes raw footage and have a hard drive plugged into it to record straight to the hard drive, which is something I can't do with the current phone. Battery improvements, thermal management improvements, and as a bonus, it's lighter than my current 14 Pro Max as well, which I thought was interesting. So none of that is like what you would call sexy headline material. It's just more, it'll do everything better for you that you want to use it for.
Oh, absolutely. And look, let's also, over that period, just look at what other phone manufacturers have done. You've got the Samsung Edge with its curved glass. You've had the Fold phone. You've had AI on the Pixel now, all of which does amazing stuff. But at the end of the day, it's not really being adopted. Not everyone has gone out and run out and got a foldable phone. Samsung had a lot of problems with the glass breaking on the Edge and gone back to a square format. So, the fact is that if you give enough time and take that longer term perspective, you can see most of these gadgets and features that opposition have put on their phones are essentially gimmicks. That might be a bit cruel, because the truth is they're trying to be innovative and trying to bring something new to the market. But the truth is it's not sticking with the market. And for better or for worse, for excitement versus lack of excitement, and the criticism that Apple cops for not having more AI features or not having, I don't know, exciting features on the phones. They're still building phones that operate at the high end very effectively, very reliably, and very durably versus competitor phones that sort of come and go with a range of features that come and go as well.
Absolutely. Just wanted to turn now to the actual product lineup itself. Obviously, we've had a bit of fun in the past about the bloat of models that have appeared over the years, and to be honest, I've found it like unnecessary. I felt like they've had too many models that, at least in the sense that they don't differentiate enough to say, why am I picking that one over that one or this one over that one, etc. But I feel like this time, again, not an exciting thing necessarily, but I think what they did was they actually focused the lineup in a lot better this time, and it was largely because if you look at it, the base iPhone 17 with the improvements they gave that one, that's really the phone for like 90% of the population that is interested in buying an iPhone. You don't need to look beyond that really, because it really is an amazing phone. That's the base model is also the one that would closely more represent like your iPhone 5s, iPhone 4s, iPhone 6s at that level, especially at the price point. Then when you look at the Air that's now just been introduced and the Pro models, because of the differentiation, like the Air has gone for form over function, and the Pros have gone more in a direction of function over form. So by doing that differentiation, like if you want the stylish sports car, you get the Air, and if you want the Mack truck to get stuff done, you get the Pro model. And they've gone more in that direction as opposed to them being like all relatively similar like they've had in the past. I think that's actually helpful in terms of that. And ironically, because when I did the ordering of the phone last night, I was having a look at what was, looking to be more popular in terms of model choice. You usually can tell that when shipping gets delayed further and further out. The actual model I got was starting to get delayed about 5 minutes into pre-orders, and which I thought was interesting. The base iPhone 17 was starting to get delayed pretty quickly. I just checked just before we got on about the Air, still available for shipping on day one. So I thought that was just as an interesting little tidbit there from what I observed.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I mean, I've always liked the idea of everything Apple does Air-based. Whether it's an iPad Air, whether it's a MacBook Air, and even an iPhone Air. I love the idea. But always then when I look at them and then I realise that you're sacrificing something to get that Air form, damn it, just go with the standard one.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing. When they did the unveil video and I looked at it, it looked a lot better than what I was expecting. But at the end of the day, you are sacrificing a lot of features. And I was never going to be getting it anyway, because I want as many features as possible. I want the maximum amount because I will end up using them. So, and I want that ability to have that. And, I've got, thankfully, the luxury to be able to do that. But,
yeah, just one other thing on the Air was that I looked at its specs, and it's the same thickness as my 12 and it weighs 20 grams more. So, I mean, all I'm saying is it's a bigger format phone, but I guess it's just interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Maybe they're trying to find that balance between it being a big phone and a small phone, because it's so thin, it should in theory be easy to carry around and be like, because the reality is as a Pro Max user for many years, it's carrying a brick around in your pocket, so you can't get around that. You have to be comfortable with that trade-off if you want all of the Pro features, etc. But I could see the appeal of a super thin phone that doesn't, but the thing is, it's still big.
Yeah, that's right. You can't get around that. So just because it's slim. And by the way, I've got an iPhone 13, not a 12.
Oh, we got to get this right, don't we? Look, but as I said though, like I think we mentioned when I was doing the iOS 26 beta testing that your 13 will just be just fine on that. It'll probably work better, and you'll get a few more years out of it.
Yeah, maybe I'll be waiting till the 19 now. I don't know. Like,
well, maybe that's somewhere where we can slowly wrap it up. Is that, to me, the iPhone Air, apart from being, you know, an interesting device on its own, it's very clearly looks like half of a folding phone. So I can imagine that next year they're going to release an iPhone Fold, and it's just going to be two of these things slapped together, essentially.
Now, just on that, great idea, and I love innovation. You love innovation, and we've just said how much we love the iPhone Air, even though we'd never get one. So, would you get an iPhone foldable?
Yeah, no,
and neither would anyone else.
for two reasons in particular. I wouldn't be against it if I felt eventually at some point it was going to serve some practical use, you know, as the daily phone. I wouldn't get the first gen of it because even though Apple's pretty good at first gen products, you still don't get the first gen. As far as I'm concerned, I'd rather wait for some incremental improvements over a couple of generations before trying it out. But at this stage in the way I use my phones, I don't really have a need for a folding phone. I can understand, like, there's something about, you know, okay, you open it up and you've got a tablet. That would be an interesting experience, I guess. It's just not appealing to me right now in terms of general day-to-day use. I've gotten used to my slab of glass, really, you know.
Well, there you go.
The question is, would you? That's the thing.
Oh, no, I wouldn't. You know, and I think, as I've said in one of the many SciTech Culture episodes, I had a friend who got the sandwich phone I call it a sandwich phone because it looks like a sandwich when it's closed, the foldable Samsung, a while back. And I certainly saw the value of it, and I certainly saw the value of it for him with the work that he does and being able to watch videos and look at spreadsheets on his phone very easily. So I certainly get it, but you're right, it's a use case. It's either for you or it's just simply not for you.
Yeah. Exactly. And having said that, with, you know, what I would call my tacit recommendations for the current lineup, I'd say the Air and the Pro and Pro Max models fit into that category as well. Everyone else, go get that base iPhone 17 because that'll do everything that you really want. And funny enough, it's edging pretty close to, you know, pro level, sort of a pro level experience. You're missing a camera, maybe the size of the screen if you don't opt for the bigger one. And yeah, the transfer speed out of the port's a bit lackluster, but you know, you're getting everything else really.
Gee, you almost sold it to me, Ben.
No, maybe you've got like another year or two. Get the iPhone. Well, that's the thing. Like, just to finish up on, there's the rumors of the 20th anniversary iPhone getting the all screen design finally. No cutouts, no dynamic islands, no notches, no nothing. Maybe that's the one you'll need to hold out for.
Maybe I'll just hold out for Apple to actually release something useful with AI. I don't know.
Potentially, or you could do another Android experiment, perhaps.
I don't think I could go back there.
Absolutely. All right, Steve, we might wrap it up there. Interesting. There were some other announcements at the event: the new AirPods and new watches. Yeah, okay. If you're up for another set of those, that's fine. The only thing I'll mention is that the least expensive Apple Watch actually got a fairly significant upgrade, and to the point of questioning whether or not why you would buy the more expensive ones, because it pretty much got everything that the more expensive ones do. But having said that, you know, that's probably another use case. Is it useful, etc. But yeah, interesting times. Yeah, again, you know, if you're in the market for, I think it's gotten to the stage, and this is a good way to wrap it up, I guess. If you're in the market for it, then fine. But we're well past the days of these types of announcements being exciting.
Very true. Until they release something that's no longer a phone.
Yes, that's right. All right, so that's it for this week's episode. We'll catch you next time.